Anthony Arvanitakis, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back on the show, and thank you for pronouncing my last name so properly.
Well, I learned from last time. So we had you on the show over almost a year and a half ago. That's episode number 177 for those of you who want to check that out. It's called Homemade Muscle and Bodyweight Training. And we dug into this just terrible accident that happened to you where you lost your leg and how you used bodyweight training to rehabilitate not only your body, but also your psyche, because you were just in this terrible funk for such a long time. For those who haven't listened to that episode, check it out. It's inspiring, but also lots of action-oriented advice where you can apply it to your own life. You got a new book out. It's all about making fitness a ritual, making fitness stick. I'm curious, why did you feel like you needed to devote an entire book to this topic? Was it a problem you saw with a lot of your clients? Like they were starting bodyweight training, but then they just stopped for whatever reason?
Well, I think it's a very common problem for everyone nowadays, for coaches. It was also something that helped me solve my problem. So basically we live in this age of abundance of information. And I think there's too much knowing, but not enough doing, as the classic quote says from Van Goethe or from Bruce Lee, who also uses it. Like, knowing is not enough. We must apply. So basically I realized that, okay, what's the point of writing books? Because I really like writing workout books, but what's the point of writing workout books when people don't have like sort of a recipe, something that can help them to learn how to incorporate these in their weekly routines and to keep on practicing them, not only in the beginning when everybody's motivated, usually when they get started with a workout plan, but also to make it a lifestyle. As I started my project, Homemade Muscle, things got more and more busy. I got really excited about it. So I reached a point where I was working like 6 days a week, about 12 hours a day. I realized that even I personally was struggling with balancing everything in my life and my workouts. That's when I started basically doing a lot of research on time management, on life and work balance, productivity, habit formation, stuff like that. I realized this is great. If I put all this information in sort of like a book, it will be, first of all, great for my clients, great for me. Basically, something very important that I should have in my library. Basically, that's how I got inspired to write this book.
So for you, it was just being really busy got in the way of your fitness goals. And what other things usually gets in the way of people trying to make exercise a habit? Is it busyness, or are there other things involved as well?
Yeah, well, it's being busy, but also bad time management. Spending too much of your cognitive resources, of your brain power in things that can be very automatized, can be where you can use as things such as rituals that we'll be talking about today. Bad influences can be another thing, people that just get in our way and affect us in a negative way, can be wasting time. Again, as we said, things that are not useful, like TV, social media, and stuff like that. So those are, I think, the big drainers that get in the way.
So that's exercise. What about diet? I mean, a lot of people can get in the exercise habit, but like diet is where they trip up.
Yeah. So with dieting, there's this word I found actually in a really great book from a coach that really look up to, Dan John. He has this book with another guy. Sorry, I don't remember his name, but it's called Fat Loss Happens on Monday. And so he has this category of people that are called pushers. So pushers are basically people that you go outside to eat and you'll try to keep your nutrition healthy, or maybe even in your own home. And they'll be like, just have another piece of dessert, or just have a little bit more of that. Oh, come on, don't be that hard on yourself. And personally, I'm really accustomed to pushers because Greece, I would say Greece has pushers in Greece are the best in the world in doing that. This is because they started from our grandparents, that they basically went through a lot of hardship. Greek people, 2 generations before mine, so my grandparents went through a lot of starvation, a lot of war. And I think the way they dealt with that trauma they had from their childhoods was to push food into their grandkids. And that's one of the biggest reasons Greece now has an epidemic of obese people. So pushers are definitely a category of people that can mess up your diet. Can be your friends, can be your spouse, can be anybody. Because, every time you want to make change, that intimidates people around you because they realize that it's also in their hands to make changes in their lives. And sometimes people don't like that. So that's one reason you can mess your diet. And other reasons after that is it's very important to remove foods that are not good for you from your home. Because, if I have my favorite desserts at home, I don't care how much I'm motivated with my diet, invested I am, it's going to be very difficult not to have those foods when I'm really tired at the end of the day, when I'm drained emotionally and all that. So resisting is very difficult. So definitely having a clean kitchen with good quality foods. Yeah, I would say those are the biggest things that you should avoid with your diet. The biggest problems that can get in your way.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in just getting the bad food out of your house. We had a guy on the podcast, Ian Bogost, a while back ago, talk about the difference between restraint and constraint. And a lot of times we focus on the restraint, like, okay, if I can just restrain my willpower, and if I can just control my desires, then everything is going to be good. But like he says, that's exhausting to do. And eventually you're just going to wear out and you're going to go, okay, I'm just going to just blow through that pack of donuts that is in the house. So he says, instead of thinking about restraining yourself, think of putting constraints on yourself, right? Just eliminating the things so you can't do it. And you don't even have to think about it. You don't have to exercise any of that willpower or restraint to not do the thing. So big believer in that. Okay, so let's get to the meat of the book. You are advocating forming good habits through rituals, particularly exercise habits. So when people hear the word ritual, they often think church, etc. For the Greeks, what would be a great ritual there? The Temple of Dionysus or something like that. So what do you mean by a ritual?
So a ritual is basically a routine. I just prefer the word ritual because it just has a warmer tone to it, a cozier tone. And in some way, it's something, I don't know, that makes you respect the process more in some way. So yeah, if you feel uncomfortable with the word ritual, you don't have to use it. But for me, it works. And for a lot of people, it works. And in simple words, a ritual, the way at least I use it in my book, is a cluster of daily, simple, fixed tasks that you have in your daily schedule anyway, combined with habits. So let's say an example of my morning ritual. My morning ritual is I'm going to wake up. I'm going to have a cup of tea. So that's my daily fixed habit. That's something I would do anyway. After that, a habit that I've incorporated the last years will be meditation. So I'm going to do some mindfulness meditation for 10 to 15 minutes. After that, I'm going to brush my teeth, which is, again, a daily habit, fixed habit that I have in my schedule anyway. And after that, I'm going to have a second habit, which will be creating a list of today's goals. Why do I do that? Well, basically, it's easier for your brain to connect new habits that you want to incorporate with things that are more deeply carved in your brain's neural pathways already. So things you've been doing for years, like brushing your teeth and all that, those are things that you probably wouldn't like to do. You probably wouldn't like wasting your time on those, but you've created a very solid habit out of these things. So they're easy to do. Now, when you combine those with new habits, it sort of gives you a steadier ground to anchor that new habit. So your brain connects these new habits easier when you combine them with these fixed habits. It makes it easier to adapt to new habits. So these are simple things, and for some people, I don't know, they might not sound that amazing, but in practice, it works, and it's one of the few things that I found that really helps so much with creating new habits.
So you kind of walked us through your daily ritual, but how do you make exercise a ritual? Is there something you do to get ready for the exercise, your workout? I mean, what do you do? What does that look like there?
For my workout, I have my quote unquote magic pre-workout checklist. So what's that? It's basically a list of things that I'm going to do just before starting to work out. And the reason I have a checklist with these is just so I don't have to think every time, did I do that? Did I do this? So for example, my checklist is number 1. It will be, depends on the periods. Some periods I like to listen to music. Sometimes I like to train more mindfully, but for example, this period I'm training with music. So number one on my list will be charge my MP3 player. And I do this because a lot of times, I'll be like training in the middle of the workout and my battery is going to die and like instantly motivation is going to drop. And I'll be frustrated. Like, why didn't I charge my MP3 player? So that's number one in my list. Number two is airplane mode. So that means basically I'm switching off everything, computers, phones, everything that can get in the way. Because I think for a lot of us, you might start your workout and somebody's going to call you and you'll be like, yeah, I'm just going to talk with him for 20 seconds. But those 20 seconds end up being like half an hour. And then you don't have time to complete most of your workout because afterwards, maybe you have to pick up the kids from school or do this and that. And you just end up like rushing to your workout, maybe skip your warm up, get injured, and everything basically gets out of order. So very important, always switch off your phones. Some people might be like, yeah, but I have family and stuff like that. What if something important comes up? Well, there are settings you can put for, special people in your life that could be able to call you. You could do that. Third thing in my list is preparing my water bottle, just putting some water in my bottle. And the fifth is what I call uniform, basically, and equipment preparation. So uniform is just a personal thing I like to do. I like to use the same clothes for working out because they sort of put me in the mood to train. I first read that from David Allen in his book, Getting Things Done. That's where I stole that tip from. He also has like specific clothes. He uses it for his workouts because he says that, that puts him in a workout mode. It seems to work for me as well. And prepping my equipment. So, everything is set up, all my stations, everything I'm going to need. So, you don't have, maybe you're training and in the middle of your training, you realize that you're missing a piece of equipment. So you have to like run back home or do whatever. Everything, all that just gets you out of the flow of your workout, which just adds more sort of internal mental friction. And, sometimes it can be enough on a very difficult day to demotivate you from your workout. All this basically removes decision-making, even small decisions. You can read this in a lot of books on productivity and stuff like that, can drain your willpower and motivation in a big amount. So having that list that just gets you in the flow of the workout, just eliminates decision-making and just makes everything flow, can make your workout a lot easier. Because the most difficult part in a workout is getting started for most people. I'm pretty sure that people who train for a while have noticed that a lot of times they're not in the mood to train, but if they get over that first hump of resistance, the rest of the workout flows really easily and they're really happy they got started and did the workout anyway.
So do you actually have your pre-workout checklist like typed out or written out somewhere?
Yeah. So I basically have this rigid card. What are they're called? I first read that from Ryan Holiday. It's the way. So
Oh, the index cards.
Yeah. Thank you. Index cards. So I use index cards that are, they have like this thick carton, and I basically have 5 steps on that. And, I always have them available. I just put it in front of me and it just gives me, in a way, some, comfort. Even though I've been doing these for years now, I like having that in front of me. And, depending on your lifestyle and all that, sometimes you might make some iterations. It helps a lot to just have that in front of you. And I found that that works pretty well with most of my clients as well.
It sounds like what you're doing is you're externalizing stuff from your head. So instead of wasting all that mental bandwidth thinking about, okay, what's next on my list, you can devote all that just to thinking about your workout. So an important part of ritual is timing, right? If we think about like rituals we take part in everyday life, go to church, there's baptisms, holidays, you do it at a specific time, right? Whether a specific time in your life or a specific time of the year. Let's talk about the timing of the ritual of exercise. Do you think there's a best time to work out for exercise, like morning or afternoon, or does it really matter? And as long as you get your workout in, you're good to go.
So in terms of performance and human physiology, we know from sports science that training around afternoon, 5-ish, something like that, is the optimal time to train. Like heart rate, blood pressure, and all that are at optimal levels. But For us regular people who don't train to like break a world record or whatever, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what's mostly functional for your life. For people who struggle with consistency, usually it is best to get your workout done as early in the day as possible, because that just eliminates possibilities that, you might end up having a lot of work later in the day. Other things can pop out. So if you get started with your workout early, ideally before your work and all that, before most of the people start waking up and start calling you, that's the best time for me to train for most people, especially those struggling with consistency. As I said, for me, I like training about 3 to 4 hours after I've woken up. So that's usually around 9 a.m. But there isn't a perfect time. The perfect time depends on your schedule and what's more functional for your lifestyle. So when it's the time that there are the least possibilities that someone will get in your way, I think that's the best time.
So I think that's an interesting point with rituals. Like, oftentimes we think we hear rituals and we think it's like there's this very hardened thing that you never deviate from. But as I read your book, and it sounds like what you're advocating is, yes, have something, hard and firm, but be willing to adjust when you need to.
Yeah, because things won't always go the way you like them to. When it comes to that, it's all about priorities. So how important is exercise for you today? Let's say other things got in the way and it's late in the day and you really don't have the mood to train and you're tired and you want to eat and go home. How important is exercise for you? And for me, it's a big investment, because first of all, it's a big investment for your health, but also for your wallet. If you think nowadays, how many people have health problems because they don't exercise, and how much does that translate into paying money to doctors once you get that problem? It's definitely also a financial investment. So how important is exercise for you? Make sure you realize that and always keep that in mind when, it's not, you don't feel like training and you're having a bad day and you didn't train the time you wanted to. So these are things you have to always keep into consideration.
Right. And well, you talk about too that the rituals are much more powerful than motivation when you're pursuing a goal. Rituals or systems or routines, because I feel like the way most people approach fitness is like they got to get themselves really motivated. They read a bunch of Instagram memes about they're going to be a beast in the gym, but then they get to the gym, or they don't even get to the gym or start doing a body weight routine because they don't know what they're going to do. Like they don't have any like small steps that they can take, and so all that motivation just goes to waste.
Yeah. Well, motivation is definitely important, but it's also definitely not something you can rely on. There's this quote that says, how does it go? Motivation doesn't last, but so doesn't bathing. So you have to bathe every day, just like you have to motivate yourself every day. But still, there will always be periods when you wake up with low motivation. You won't be feeling like training, and that's when rituals really kick in. If you just manage to get over that first hump of resistance that you experience in the beginning of the day or in the beginning of your workout, and you keep in mind like all the tips I include in the book, that's when you can experience the biggest value of motivation. For example, I did have, people think that even us trainers and people who are coaches do this as a living and are like really passionate about exercise think that this is like 365 days a year how we are, which is not. And, for example, this year I did have like a couple of weeks when I really didn't want to train because, life just happens sometimes and you're going through other emotional periods and stuff like that. But that's when basically my rituals really kicked in and really had my back in a way. So we all struggle with consistency, even with the things we love. And I mean, even with the people we love, we all have difficult periods. So keeping in mind that, these are just phases, and depending on solid rituals that you've basically hardened and you've incorporated in your lifestyle is essential. Because, when life is good, it's easy to practice those rituals, and you should. So you learn to adapt to them. But when life kicks you in the teeth, that's when you can really see the value of rituals.
Right. Like my coach, Matt Reynolds, says those days where you don't feel like training, just those are days you treat, he calls them blue collar days, right? It's like you just treat it like you put on your hard hat, you put on your coveralls, and you just do the work. You check in. And it might not be that great of a workout, you'll probably just be going through the motions, but that's okay. Because what you want to do is you want to keep that habit ingrained in you. And also, what's interesting, even if you don't feel like working out in the beginning, what's one of the powerful things of rituals is that it sort of bootstraps you into taking action. And as you take action, you find yourself feeling more motivated to actually do the thing you're actually doing.
Yeah. Like most of those days, once I'm over like the first 10 or 15 minutes of just preparing stuff and getting my warm up, I'm like, my mood is good. And I'm actually, most of those days, I'm again really enthusiastic with the workout. And as you said, you also have like, just days when you just punch the clock, and that's okay. Not every day has to be a super special day with your workout or with everything.
So you talk about in the book this idea of the avalanche effect with these rituals you develop, not only for exercise, but for other areas of your life. What is the avalanche effect?
So the avalanche effect is basically the same effect that you have with, this also works in the pre-workout checklist. So starting with little things, accomplishing little things successfully builds momentum and gives you more confidence for slowly getting more challenging tasks done, more complicated things done, more bigger things done. So for me, I know that if I start my day properly, for example, if I wake up successfully, if my alarm clock rings at 6 o'clock and I don't snooze, I don't check out any social media on my phone, I get up, I pour some tea, do my meditation, and sign my checklist, I know that 99% of those days, the rest of my day will flow as productively as that first half an hour. So basically, the more you accomplish tasks one after the other, the other thing is, that the more you accomplish tasks one after the other, the more invested you feel in staying into that flow of productivity. That's how I experience it. And that's the feeling that the avalanche effect creates. And I thought of that metaphor because I remember sort of in those Disney cartoons where, an avalanche effect would start with a little tiny snowball, which of course that's not the technical way avalanches start, but I always remember that Disney metaphor, that Disney scene where, things start with a little snowball, and as that snowball goes downhill, it gets bigger and bigger and has more momentum and more speed, and it's more unstoppable. So that's how it works. They also did a study and saw that when people, for example, got up in the morning and made their beds, they would also get into that flow of productivity and do more and more things successfully. Not that making your bed is something magical and it will make you, do amazing things the rest of the day, but it can put you into a flow of, doing more and more things gradually during the rest of the day.
And how did the avalanche effect help get you out of, you were, after your accident where you lost your leg, you were in like a 5-year funk, like just a depression. How did the avalanche effect help you get out of that rut?
Yeah. So while I was writing this book and I thought of this metaphor, I realized that actually that was the way I got out of my depression those years. And I didn't know I did that way, but that's how it happened. So basically, after my accident, I spent 5 years having one operation after the other. All of my friends were moving on with their lives, finishing their studies, getting jobs, this and that. And I was just stuck. And that eventually got me really depressed. I couldn't exercise, which was always something that helped me mentally. And I was really stuck for 5 years. I couldn't do anything. I would try to read a book. I would just stop after one paragraph. I couldn't do anything successfully. There was zero willpower left in me. So I started with one little thing, and that was basically meditation. So mindfulness meditation, it was something I started doing in the mornings. It was I didn't really think it would help me a lot, but I was like, okay, this is the only thing I haven't tried. Let's give this a try. And it really helped me into clearing up that fog of my head and having that emotional stability in the beginning of the day to think a bit more clearly and have a bit more willpower to invest on other things. So after meditation became a stable habit for about 3 weeks, I added exercise again into my lifestyle. Once my exercise was stable, I started eating healthy. No, sorry. First, I started exercising. After that, I started reading books. And after that, I started eating healthy. And sort of all these small habits sort of started piling up and created this avalanche effect where I started working on this project, Homemade Muscle. I started socializing again more. And life just started getting better and better.
So you didn't try to do it all at once? Because I feel like that's what a lot of people try to do when they want to improve themselves. They try to make all the changes all at once.
Yeah, no, definitely. That fails like 90% of the times. Maybe there are some people that can do that, but you definitely want to make sure that a habit is fixed before you start adding more and more things, because then, you don't have a stable base. So I would say add one habit. I would say it depends on the habit, but at least make sure you stay disciplined to that habit for a month, and it feels really fixed. You feel confident that, okay, I got this now. I can slowly experiment with adding something new. Never add too many things all at once.
So you talked about, sometimes you get really busy with your work and everything. How do you keep the ritual of working out when you get in those really busy times in your life? For example, one time in my life that got really busy is like when my wife had kids. For like the first 2 weeks, things were nuts. But I still managed to get a workout in. I don't know how I did it. But I'm curious, what did you do to ensure that you keep with that routine or that ritual even when you're really, really busy?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that a typical mistake is obsessing during these periods and sort of trying to train as much as you train during like really relaxed periods during those difficult times. So, maybe if you're training like 5 times a week, don't obsess on getting 5 workouts a week again, because what happens then usually is that you're going to miss a workout and you will go to like a downward spiral. Basically, you will have the opposite of the avalanche effect, like a negative avalanche effect. You'll skip one workout and then you'll be disappointed and you're going to mess up your nutrition as well. And then you'll be like, okay, I didn't train, I didn't eat healthy, screw it. I'm gonna, maybe stop meditating as well, or whatever other habits you have in your life. So that creates like a downward spiral, like a negative avalanche effect. The key to these periods is to compromise. So sit down, like, okay, think, how much time do I have? Is it logical to like really push myself to train 5 days a week, which was like the same as I was training before? Or maybe it would be healthier to, train 2 times a week. So 2 days of strength training per week has been proven to be enough to at least maintain your progress. So focus during these periods on maintenance, don't try to like keep on breaking plateaus or losing more weight if that's your goal, or building more muscle. So compromise and focus on maintenance, because the end goal basically of fitness in a long-term lifestyle is maintenance. You're only going to be improving for a specific amount of time and until a specific age. And, maintenance is not a bad goal, at least for difficult periods of your life. So don't obsess on doing things perfect. Try to at least maintain your results or find the minimum effective dose that you can apply this period in your life that, will help you to maintain your results, but also maintain that habit. I would say that's the healthiest way to go.
Love that. So we've been talking a lot about exercise, but diet is an important part of fitness, right? And your fitness goals. How can you apply the power of ritual to your diet?
Mm-hmm. Well, a very important thing is what works really effectively is having steady times with your eating schedule. So, it doesn't matter what's the frequency of your meals. First of all, the most important thing is getting your protein in and reaching your caloric needs. Either that's a caloric restriction or a surplus if you want to add mass. So make sure those are all regulated. And after that, make sure that you have steady times of the day that you eat. So, maybe you have your first meal 3 hours after you wake up. Maybe you have like a snack around 3 o'clock when you have your break at work. Maybe you eat at 8. So try to keep all that stable, because the more stable these things are, the easier it is for you to stay into that flow of eating healthy. Because a lot of times if you eat stuff out of your normal schedule, you'll miscalculate your calories. A lot of times it's shown in studies that people forget about meals and snacks they have. And that's especially when it's done out of their regular eating times. So make sure you have regular eating times. And another thing that's very functional for me is eating the same foods every day. It might sound a bit boring, but again, it eliminates that decision making. So I won't eat, of course, the same dinner every day. I'll make sure that I cook something nice at the end of the day and something different, a nice home cooked meal. But the other meals of my day, they're very, very typical. So my first meal will be 3 eggs with 100 grams of cottage cheese and some rice, 2 rice cakes nowadays. My second meal of the day will be this super low fat yogurt, very high in protein, with a scoop of whey protein and some honey. And later on, I'm going to have 2 pieces of fruit with some nuts. And, that's what I eat every day. And maybe it sounds a bit boring. I don't know for some people, but for me, it really works because it just eliminates that decision making. I won't be tempted to, maybe I should have that. Maybe it fits my macros a little bit, or maybe it doesn't. But yeah, just having that stable eating schedule every day and just having a really nice, rewarding dinner.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I eat the same thing for breakfast every day, the same thing for lunch. Lunch is usually chicken breast, sweet potatoes, or some sort of beef and rice. And then I have some protein shakes in between breakfast and lunch and dinner. And then dinner is whatever my wife cooks that evening. Pretty boring, but yeah, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about my calories or whatever.
Especially functional for bachelors,
Yeah, I think once you get married and you have kids, you have to put in those routines or those rituals with your diet. You have to be more fastidious about it because it's easy. It's so easy when you have kids to like sneak in stuff that you probably shouldn't eat, right? You're like, hey, they didn't finish their food on their plate. I'll just go ahead and finish that myself. No, they didn't finish their pie. Well, I'll finish that for them. So you got to be a lot more disciplined when you have kids.
Yeah.
Well, Anthony, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to learn more about the new book and your work?
So you can find everything on my website. That's homemademuscle.com. I'm pretty active, mostly active on YouTube. Again, on YouTube, if you search for Homemade Muscle, that my channel will be the first result. And you can also find me on Facebook, Homemade Muscles, plural there. And in Instagram, again, Homemade Muscles. If you want to check out daily photos, motivating stuff. Yeah. Those are the best ways to find me. And yeah, on Amazon, if you just search for Homemade Muscle, again, you'll see my first book, and you can just click on my author's name and see the rest of the books as well.
Fantastic. Well, Anthony Arvanitakis, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much as well. Looking forward to our next interview.
My guest today was Anthony Arvanitakis. He's the author of the new book, Train the Body and the Mind Will Follow. You can find out more information about the book and the rest of his work at homemademuscle.com. Also check out episode number 117, where you can find my previous interview with him. It's really fascinating. Hear the backstory behind Homemade Muscle. Also check out our show notes at aom.is/bodymind, where you can find links to resources where you can delve deeper into this topic.